400 antennas near where I live. 436. It is so scary how heavily it's proliferated. That's just in my area. That's just right near where I live. They are multiplying so fast and new applications are being developed so quickly. My question to you is, do you sleep with any type of, not a Faraday cage, but any type of material around your bed? You shot a woman talking about how she has such electromagnetic sensitivity that she actually has something around her bed so that when she sleeps, the microwaves can't get in through her sleeping area. And I think that also it's interesting to note that most of us don't know that these microwave signals, frequencies, get in right through the walls.
There's one easy way to tell that it's coming through the walls. If you have a cell phone and you're getting signal within these walls, that means you're getting the radiation within these walls. It's I think there's a fine line between taking added precautions and trying to live your life. People who have electrohypersensitivity, they need to take those precautions. They need to live within a Faraday cage. Unfortunately, she needs those blinds on her windows and that film on her wall so that she can actually survive, so she can function as a human being. Knock on wood, I don't have that same issue. It doesn't mean that she's crazy. It means that she's probably an early warning system for the rest of us. We don't suffer from the direct symptoms that she suffers from, but we might suffer, we might suffer later on if we don't take the precautions. This is the reality of the situation. You talk about 430 antennas in your vicinity. Unfortunately, not even antennasearch.org has a comprehensive list. So there might even be more antenna in your area, which it's a scary thought. They're all around us. This technology is so prolific. What do you do? It's a difficult question to answer.
I was just talking to a dear friend of mine from France who lives in Provence, and I was telling her you should try to get something going in France where at least you have a sense of where most of them are, like an antennasearch.com for each country. I think that would be a good project, don't you?
I think it would be an excellent project. I know that there are groups in various countries who are trying to do this.
And these things should be mandated. They should have to be transparent, where they're going, where they're placed. I understand they're hiding them now in people's apartments, in their homes, on their roofs, putting trees around them or branches around them. They're hiding them in steeples on churches. I mean, what's the reason to hide them? And they're paying off people who own homes and apartment buildings to put these antennas there. It's very scary.
Well, they're paying them off quite nicely as well. They're paying $3,000 to $4,000 a month. They say they're hiding them for aesthetic reasons. That the homeowners association doesn't want to look at this ugly antenna. That they don't want any opposition within the neighborhood to having this antenna go up.
Well, it's possible that part of that is true, but
True.
I don't think the whole of it is true.
No, I mean, and when you have it in a public area and you have it disguised as a flagpole, I mean, to me, this is the ultimate slap in the face. A symbol of your nationalism and your pride and your freedom, and you're being radiated through this flagpole. A lot of them don't even have flags because, believe it or not, the reason a lot of them don't have flags is because it costs the cell phone company too much money to send somebody to put a flag to run a flag up and down on it. So they want this flagpole without even having the flag on it. It's a ridiculous situation.
Now, I know that Peter Vallone Jr. spent 5 years fighting the cell phone industry and is still in a big battle. Is this in New York City or is this in another area?
No, this is in New York City. He's a New York City councilman. He's been doing a lot of work. He's the representative for Queens, and he's also the safety chair. He's been working on it very hard. He's been coming up against a lot of resistance. Some people are listening to him now, but he's been coming up against a lot of resistance. It's a convenient technology, and people are, especially lawmakers, are getting a lot of money. People who, like you say, who are hosting these on their land or in their apartments or on their roofs are getting a lot of money. There's a lot of money involved, and to try and fight this, the easiest way to combat somebody who's fighting this based on the independent research is just to say they're crazy. And just saying that sort of discredits them. You have Professor Henry Lai from the University of Washington, for example, who the industry has attacked on many occasions because he's trying to get the message out that this is dangerous technology, and all they do is they sorry all they do is they discredit him as a person, and rather than try to come to some sort of solution to work with these independent scientists and say, okay, we're not going to admit that this is dangerous, but let's say there are better ways of producing this technology. Let's work together and try to find safer ways of making this technology. It's this. I often I often try to draw the simile with the cars, and say, when cars first came out, they didn't have seatbelts in them, and the car industry didn't. Sorry, the car industry didn't necessarily come out and say cars are dangerous, but they said let's make them a little bit safer and put seatbelts in them. A few years later, they said, well, let's make them a little bit safer and put airbags. So this is the same sort of thing that the cell industry can do. And say we're not saying that they're dangerous. We're just going to make them safer. You can always make technology safer.
I wonder what the kind of technology it is, if in fact that's really as true as a seatbelt or an airbag. I think the analogy is interesting. I'm not sure it's as defined or refined as the physics of microwave and what it actually does, because it is what it is, right? It's the substance that's being beamed and transported that's the problem. So it's the very technology itself that's disruptive to human life and wellness. The other thing is that the communities, small communities who are in trouble, are also being paid off to put cell towers and antennas there. And I want you to talk about that because that is very important, particularly in an economy that's suffering, in a global economy that's suffering, and people that are in dire need and that are suffering. For the cell phone companies coming to them and coming into their communities to pay them off and give them a stipend, most people would take it. And that is the treacherousness of this.
Well, most people would take it because the other side of the coin is even more dangerous. The offer is either as a city council or a town council or a village council, either you take our money and we put up the towers, or we sue you and win, and then you end up paying, legal costs and paying court costs, etc., 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 and we still put up the towers and don't pay you. So those are the two options that people have. And I mean, oftentimes, and this, as you say, the economy is very dire. The economy is very dire right now, and people would rather take the money than try to take them to court and lose the court battle, and then end up in the same situation they would have been without the money, if they had just conceded at the beginning.
But why would the company sue a community? Doesn't it have its own jurisdiction and its own ability to say, no, we don't want it here?
Well, not in the United States, at least. Not in a lot of places in the world, but not in the United States.
Why?
The Telecom Act of 1996 says that you can't stop this technology, essentially. You can't use health as your primary concern. The Telecom Act of 1996 says we want this technology to be spread everywhere. Okay, now the technology is spread everywhere. The Telecom Act of 1996 needs to be updated and say, okay, I have cell signal on my phone. If it's for emergency reasons, I can make an emergency phone call no matter what network I'm on. So we need to redress the Telecom Act of 1996 and see how it applies today. But as it still stands, the local communities have no say. If the telecom industry wants to put a tower, essentially they can put a tower, unless the city council comes up with some sort of ordinance, based on antique buildings, for example. Besides this, really their hands are tied. Lots of councils, lots of small communities have been sued, and they've lost the money. And this sort of discourages other communities from standing up to the industry, because this is ultimately going to be the final resort, unless you have some other some other clause that you can use to defend yourself.
So the Telecom Act of 1996 was a federal act. It's like a preemptive provision. What would it take to have it reformed? I mean, obviously, the damage and the dangers are already laying inside massive amounts of infrastructure of cell phone towers and antennas. The question is,